Antonio Brown and Tyreek Hill learn a little cosmic thing called karma. Yes, boys, karma. Sometimes you just got to love it. Meanwhile, the Patriots prove who's the boss already, and it's not even October while the fish are dead in the water. So was that 18-point spread too kind? The Jets are falling apart, literally. Bruce Arians arrives in Tampa, but so far, same old Jameis. Matt Patricia learns the hard way why Pete Carroll axed Darrell Bevell. And the Colts and Texans prove that picking money lines over straight lines is not always the way to go. Trust me, I know. All this and more on OFN Today with Mark Lawrence of Covers.com for this Thursday, the 12th of September, 2019 on the Ourlads Football Radio Network. Brought to you by Ourlads.com, providing the best pro and college football depth charts in the industry. And Covers.com, featuring live scores, stats, and odds, considered the most convenient and entertaining source for sports news and facts, with over 45 million visits a year. So here we are, Mark, once again, talking football, this time be able to do it on video, and I'm glad to have you ready to go for week 2 after a successful week 1.
Nice to be able to see and converse with you, Greg, as well. And as you know, we're really excited about week number 2 because that's when the handicapping really begins. We can find out a little bit about what the teams were in week number 1, have something to work off, and proceed with week number 2.
Well, let's first of all, I've got to start with this Patriot-Dolphin game because, I mean, I'd be honest with you. I thought the line would have been in the mid-20s. And I think they wanted it to be in the mid-20s. They just don't want to embarrass anybody.
Well, they're going to end up embarrassing Miami in this game because it's 20 when we kick off. Maybe not mid-20s, but it's certainly at least 20-point favorites. And if it does, that'll be the first time in my database that we've had a National Football League road favorite laying this many points. And I go back to 1976. So that's how pathetic the Dolphins were last week. And it's all were in opening week as well.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, though, the Dolphins were historically bad, and this is one of those lines that you have to believe, Mark, that the only way that the Patriots don't cover the game is they just start playing all their backups in the second quarter or something. I mean, seriously, this is everybody understand. Look, it's one thing to be a matchup of good versus bad. It's another thing, great first versus 32nd when 32nd has already given up on the season.
Well, you know, I think that's epitomized by what we saw in the Florida Sun-Sentinel on Monday on the sports page when the sports page headline read, "Tank you," because that's what's going on with the Miami Dolphins down here. Management could care less about this football season, and it's only epitomized not only by their performance last week, but you go up and down their roster. Their roster is filled with practice squads, third and second string players, and anybody that was even remotely close to being any good or being a possible legitimate starter was cut or released. So it's not so much in the players who are tanking, it's management who's throwing this towel in this football season. That's why we're going to see these unbelievable lines against the Miami Dolphins all season long.
All right, well, it can't get any worse, the line. You would think not. Well, they're going to go to New England, so it can. Well, let's talk about the game tonight, Tampa Bay and Carolina. And, you know, I think all in all, it was not a bad result for Carolina. They faced the NFC champs. It went down to the wire. Couple of turnovers here that were wiped away. A little bit cleaner play. I mean, Cam Newton didn't really play at all in the preseason. So all in all, I think there's still a positive way to look ahead for Carolina starting in the game tonight, whereas Tampa Bay, I mean, you lost to San Francisco by 2 touchdowns. Maybe it shouldn't have even been that close. They've got a long way to go. I don't know. It's Jameis Winston. His time is running out.
It is, and that's the reason Bruce Arians was brought in to correct his ways. He's a quarterback whisperer type coach. Obviously, he has a big project with him right now with Jameis Winston, and I don't know, Greg, if this situation can be resolved. And I'm saying that simply because if you remember when Jameis Winston was a quarterback at Florida State, he made the same similar mistake he's making now. He throws terrible passes into coverage. He tries to thread the needle too many times. He got away with it at Florida State. He's not getting away with it in the National Football League. He's now got 79 turnovers in 59 games in an NFL football career. If he doesn't make strides in improvement between now and the end of the month, we'll see a new starting quarterback for the Tampa Bay Bucks.
It's a 7-point spread in tonight's game, and I'm not so sure I would care too much about giving up that number. The only thing is when you take a look at some of the trends at playbook.com, by the way, I do see a few trends that they go back and forth. Some seem to be, and actually most of them are negative for both teams. So it's one of those things when you got negative trends for both teams in these games, then I guess it goes back to whether or not you either want to touch the game or if you just like the game outside of the trends. I'll give one bad one for each team. Here's one that I noticed that is like a gold star that I know that, of course, you're very familiar with since it's your book. That NFL teams away in the first Thursday night game are pretty bad. Just 1-15 straight up, 2-10-4 against the spread in their last 16.
Yeah, not a good role for Tampa in this particular situation here. And a pretty good role here for Carolina if you like the fact that home teams on Thursdays, when they're coming off a home loss, are 15-1 straight up and 12-4 to the number. So some numbers do support the Carolina Panthers in this football game. I just don't like the way that Tampa played last week. I don't like the look and feel about this football team. And give Carolina credit. I mean, they lost by 3 points to the defending Super Bowl losing team, the Rams. 3 times they pulled to within 3 points, but every time the Rams countered to push that lead back up. So it wasn't that bad of a performance by Carolina. It just wasn't a winning one.
Yeah, both teams not good on Thursday night. Carolina hasn't covered a Thursday night home game in their last 5, and Tampa Bay is 1-8 ATS last 9 on Thursdays. Okay, let's go to some of the games on Sunday, and let's talk about the Atlanta game because we both liked Minnesota and Zimmer last week. We talked highly of Zimmer, especially in that spot. Minnesota, that was as clean as a week 1 win that you could ask for when you are picking teams. So Zimmer came through. Atlanta was never in the game. But this week, completely opposite effect of how I'm going to feel about Atlanta based on the trends, because Dan Quinn has never lost a game as a home dog since being the head coach at Atlanta. And Matt Ryan has won 10 of 11, both straight up and against the spread in home openers.
Yeah, there's a lot of good numbers for Atlanta in this football game, as you mentioned here, and they do come off a perplexing loss to Minnesota. When I say perplexing, I mean the fact that Minnesota dominated from start to finish on the scoreboard, but you looked inside the stats, Atlanta actually outgained Minnesota in the contest. So the Falcons did not throw the towel in that game to them, and I like that situation. I also like the fact that if you take a look at Philadelphia, in their last 6 games on Sunday nights, they're straight up and against the spread. I'm going to look for Matty Ice to make that streak 11-1 straight up in ATS in home opening games. I think the Falcons get this win.
All right, Buffalo and the Giants, and I have a few conflicting trends here. I mean, Pat Shurmur, as a head coach, has been very good following a straight-up ATS division loss. There's that, but there are so many other trends that are good on the side of Buffalo, including the fact, the best one is they're 11-0 in the last 11 games during the first 4 games of the season. We talked about that on last week's show, in Playbook, in the magazine, the preview for the season, how you have broken up these teams, a whole bunch of different opportunities for you to look at ways where you can capitalize on trends and stats. And this was one of them, quarter point, midway point, and so forth. Well, this is a good one. Again, in the first 4 games of the season, Buffalo has covered 11 straight games after they have won a game straight up versus while they're taking on a winless opponent. Of course, the Giants are 0-1. And that's almost like one of those icing on the cake trends because, to tell you the truth, I was just kind of looking to make sure that the trends would work for me because I'm just all over Buffalo this week anyway.
Well, this game is a little bit cousinary, if you will, to the New England-Miami game in the sense that I was going to preface that and say that game had ABO written all over it. Always beware of the obvious. New England was obviously the superior team last week. Miami was obviously the worst team in the National Football League. And when you collide teams doing just that, there's a regression to the mean on both parts. I believe we might see that in this football game. I'm going to use that first quarter stat that you mentioned about Buffalo to keep me out of the game. Okay? But I'm not going to bet Buffalo, and the reason that I'm not going to be playing Buffalo in this game is you take a look at Eli Manning, where he's been at his best in his career, has been against the AFC East, where Buffalo resides. Okay? He's 14 starts. He's won 11 of them, only lost to the spread twice. And when he's been the underdog against those teams, he's 7-0. So now you have the Giants coming up, that humiliating loss to Dallas. I'm going to call it humiliating because they started out 7-0, and they were just completely waxed from that point moving forward here. I got to make the Giants a live home dog here. Now, if I'm not right on this assessment here, I'll end up putting them on my taboo list moving forward here, because I thought the Giants were going to be an improved football team this year. And I think it will probably likely be sooner than later that we'll end up seeing Daniel Jones behind center for this football team.
Yep.
But I'm not going to pass on that Eli Manning stat against the AFC East. That will keep me out of the game entirely.
All right, sounds good. Let's talk about Vic Fangio going up against his former team, the Chicago Bears. So we have some games on slate of winless teams. So it's early. Look, you can be 0-2. Sometimes even good teams can be 0-3. If there's factors involved, and you can get out of that. You got a long season. It's not easy to do, but still, you don't want to start the season 0-2. But there are a couple of things that really gravitate me towards Denver, and I kind of like them anyway. But the big one that they have covered 10 straight games as a non-divisional home dog following a division game.
Yeah, that's a pretty roll for Denver. And in fact, every time you dress Denver up as a home underdog, you can almost certainly make the case for the Broncos, because they've excelled better than any team in the league in this particular role. My concern in this football game, though, and there's always a concern, we have to always look at all sides of the equation here, is you have Denver coming in off a tough game with Oakland on Monday night, where the Chicago Bears laid an egg on Thursday night. So you've got really a lot of extra rest advantage here for the Chicago Bears in this particular football game. And then you go back and you look at Denver's tendency in games after they take on Oakland. The last 4 times, they've lost 4 times straight up and against the spread. And you got the Vic Fangio thing going on here right now. Who does it help better? That's an argument that you could probably make all up until game time. Does Fangio know the Chicago team? Probably, likely so, being the defensive coordinator. But does Chicago know Fangio and his tendencies on defense? And that's probably likely so as well. So I think the Fangio-Bear thing, I think, is a complete equalizer. I think you throw that out. I'm going to opt for the rest advantage for the Chicago Bears, who were a 3-point on Thursday night, lost the game. Now they're going to take advantage of what I think is this big rest advantage against the Denver Broncos.
Okay. Chargers and Lions. And, boy, I mean, just to let you in on how things have gone for me so far, college, I didn't even want to get into what's been going on with me in college the first couple of weeks of the season. Let me just give you a little bit of a hint of what's been going on with me in college. In week 1, I had Northwestern. Okay. Wow. So we all know what happened there at the end of the game.
Did you have Oregon that same day with them?
Week 1, I had Oregon the same day.
Okay, there you go.
The same day. And, and it wasn't, it didn't get much better and then this past week, I had Fresno State. Even though it pushed, they gave up that, 4th and 13 touchdown to send it to overtime. And there were a few others and I had Army in the money line.
Oh, boy.
Yes.
Now, that was cruel. Now, you know what this is all, Greg? This sounds a lot to me. It sounds a lot to me like the opening speaker at a Gamblers Anonymous meeting. And the tale that he's telling.
I haven't even gotten to the NFL. So,
okay, well,
so in the NFL, I had the 2 money lines. I had Houston and I had the Colts. And I'm sitting there in overtime, and that obligatory coin toss, which, by the way, I had the Falcons to beat it and Patriots at the Super Bowl a couple years ago when the coin toss killed me. Yes. So I had the coin toss kill me in that one, and then I had the other one, of course, Houston. And by the way, after everything that had gone on with me, week 1 college, week 2 college, NFL. By the time we got to Monday night in the Saint game, when Houston scored that touchdown and there was 40 seconds left, I knew I was going to lose.
Oh,
Because that's how it is. When you are going through one of those stretches, you just know it's just too much time. Oh,
well,
58-yard field goal. That's it. It's over. I lost.
What they are, Greg, is not bad beats. Those are sick beats.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And when sick beats happened, you got to take a little R&R. You got to go, into the recovery room.
Yes.
And because you don't want obviously to curtail your whole season.
No.
When we've only got 2 weeks under play.
Right. Hopefully, I got the worst out of the way the first 2 weeks. That's the way I'm looking at it. But that's the whole thing about handicapping games, isn't it? And that is that you got, just like anything in life, if you feel confident in your abilities and you have a proven track record, you just keep forging on. You don't do anything crazy. You don't double down. You just keep doing the same thing that you've always done because it's just not going to keep going that bad.
We'll flip the script a little bit here also and just reverse it and just say that every break went your way the first, and you feel invincible. You feel bulletproof. That's also a big mistake that gamblers can make. You have to take each week 1 week at a time. Approach it like a business for what it is, and don't get caught up in your losses. Don't get swell-headed with your wins. Just play it conservatively 1 week at a time.
And then the final one, which was actually why I just started this thing on the Chargers, is because my 5-star was Detroit. And Detroit has this humongous lead. And you're figuring, this game is like over. And then, of course, Matt Patricia allows Darrell Bevell to call a timeout that stops everything. And then Darrell Bevell, for some strange reason, even though the game was over, decides to call a pass play like it's almost like he was thinking he was, if a tie's a loss or something. There's nothing wrong with a tie, Darrell Bevell. Why are you throwing the ball on 3rd and 18 with 7 seconds to go? You're not going to get in a field goal range. All you could do is possibly give Arizona a chance to win. You can open up the door for the opponent. You should never, ever take that chance. So, obviously, bad coaching decision by the Detroit Lions. That's why they go home after having kissed their sister with the tie with Arizona last week. Yeah, the Chargers are 5-1-1 against the spread as a road favorite under Anthony Lynn the first 2 years since he's been a head coach there. And the Chargers are what? They're a slight they're a slight road favorite of 2.5.
Here's how I can make a trend sound good, how you can twist a trend and make it sound appealing. And I can tell you this, that home dogs in Game 2 in the National Football League, when they're coming off a Game 1 situation where they were favored and did not win the game, they're 16-6 against the spread. That's a pretty good roll. But I will also say this, that 16-6, none of those games involved a tie. Every one of them were favorite and lost the game. So we just basically repainted the picture and made Detroit sound like they're an appealing role this particular week, which I don't happen to think they are, mainly because football teams that play the ties really, really are bad plays the next week. They played 5 quarters. They're disappointed in the result, and it almost always shows in the next game.
Houston and Jacksonville. Jacksonville will be starting Gardner Minshew. So I guess if you're a Jet fan like I am, it could be worse. You could lose Sam Darnold the way the Jags have lost Nick Foles, possibly for at least half the season. But Gardner Minshew gets the start. The Monday night situation for Houston, but Bill O'Brien has covered 8 straight as a favorite, or I believe he's actually covered all 8 games that he has been a favorite as the head coach of Houston versus opponents off of double-digit straight-up losses.
Yeah, and you can couple that with Houston's really good record in this series when they're off a loss, and coming off a Monday night appearance. They're 5-0 straight up and 4-1 to the number. What I do like about Houston's chances in this game are 2 things. Number one, what I'm going to say about what I like about Jacksonville in this football game with the points. And number one, Houston, I think, leaves the football game last week against New Orleans having felt that they could have and probably should have won that football game.
Yes.
They outplayed New Orleans for pretty much the game, and it got away at the end, a typical Drew Brees comeback, and now they have to pick themselves back up. Number two, you got Jacksonville in this football game in the first start for a backup quarterback.
That's right. Rookie. Oh, you there, Mark?
lose the game. They're not expecting to win the game, but they don't want to lose the game. Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, we just lost you there for a second.
Yeah,
Go right ahead.
okay. So what you don't want to see is a team that you want to see a team rallying around that backup quarterback after the star quarterback is out. And I think with Gardner Minshew that being the case here, I think Jacksonville will come up with a pretty solid effort in this game.
Let's a couple more before I let you go, and let's take a look at Indianapolis coming off that tough loss to the Chargers, and they're taking on the Titans. So if you take a look at this one, the favorite in the series has won 5 straight up and against the spread. But there are a couple of really bad trends for Tennessee. They have dropped 10 straight covers before they play a Thursday night game. And then how about this? 1-16 against the spread in the last 17 after they've won a double-digit straight-up game versus a conference opponent.
That's a pretty strong number, and that's the way Tennessee's played. Whenever they've played good, they've played bad the next week.
Yep.
And they played, obviously, a really good football game last week. So can we expect to see the same this week? The question, I think, remains unsolved given the fact that I think we might see a different Tennessee team this year. Marcus Mariota in a contract season, I think is going to end up having the best year of his career. The other side of the coin in this game is, remember the last game of the season last year? The two teams met, and Indianapolis beat Tennessee. That loss denied them a spot in the playoffs.
Yes.
So this is very, very meaningful revenge here for Tennessee. And the Colts, much like we just talked about the Houston Texans, feel, I think, to a man that they should have beat the Chargers last week in that football game and didn't. So they walk away with a loss. So the bottom line here to me is I think that meaningful revenge from being knocked out of the playoffs at the scene of the crime here in Tennessee works for the Titans this week.
Okay, and then finally the Monday night game, Cleveland and the Jets. And before the Darnold mono news, I was looking towards Cleveland anyway, but the spread is now gone from 2.5 to 6.5 over pretty much in a matter of hours. But the reason being is that, everything as far as the trends side Cleveland in this matchup. You're talking about, I guess I'll give one of them here. They're 8-1 in their last 9 off a straight-up loss as a favorite over the first 4 games of the season. And for the Jets, just bad all across the board. 1-9 ATS last 10 after a Buffalo game. And in the first 4 games of the season, the Jets have dropped 9 straight covers as dogs when they take on a team coming off a loss as a favorite.
Well, that's a pretty strong stat here in this football game, and the loss that Cleveland had might have been the ugliest of the week. Miami Dolphins aside, okay, an unexpected loss as it was, and to the degree in which it was. So, Baker Mayfield and company are coming in with this humongous chip on their shoulder in this football game. What they're going to obviously have to do is not beat themselves. 18 penalties for 182 yards is indismissible. You cannot do that and expect to win football games. And there's a bad stat as far as the Cleveland Browns are concerned, that NFL teams, after they turn the ball over 17 or more times, you go back to the year 2000, they're just 4-12 to the spread the next game. And what that tells you is things are not right with the program. And I don't know if they have enough time to make things right with Cleveland with this particular football program here. Obviously, the big news of Sam Darnold not playing in this game is a blessing in disguise here for Cleveland, because I think the Jets had all of everything working in their favor here to make Cleveland open up 0-2, the situation being what it was. But I can't chase the Jets without Sam Darnold in this football game. It would have been great to see these 2 number 1 first round selections going head-to-head, toe-to-toe against one another here. But, the Jets crashed like a Boeing 737 last week in that loss to Buffalo. It was really tragic to see, and you don't know what their psyche will be in this football game, especially after losing Darnold. I'm going to stay out of the game. I'm not going to chase a number that's gone from 2.5 to 6.5, as you say, and put that on a team that had all these bad negative numbers as Cleveland does. So the bottom line to me, this is a Monday Night Football game that I'm going to end up putting my feet up and just watching.
Yeah, I will bring a precautionary trend into the picture to close out the show, because sometimes, look, these are the ones that sometimes go right over your head and you don't realize it. But Cleveland is 0 2-2 against the spread in their last 4 games as road favorites. Now, somebody would say, well, that's 4 games. They only lost twice. Well, why does that matter? Well, here's why it matters. They've only been a road favorite once the last 4 years. They're just not used to being road favorites. There's just like they weren't used to being the team that was supposed to be this superstar team, and look how they responded week 1 to all of that pressure of being the team that everybody was after. Well, they're in the same situation almost like this week. They're supposed to win. They're now a 7-point favorite. Everybody expects them to win. Sam Darnold's not playing, and they've only been in this spot as a road favorite once in 4 years.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. They're expecting to take this next step forward to levels that they've never been to before. Not only in this Jets game, all season long, you're going to keep seeing them being priced accordingly because of all this talent that they have on hand. They're going to have to prove that this talent is able to mesh together and they can be that team that they're supposed to be. But until they do that, I can't back them. I also don't like the fact that if you take a look at the Browns, when they're a home loss, they're just 2-12 to the spread the next game after that. So there's a lot of negative Cleveland Browns trends in this football game here. That's going to keep me out of betting Cleveland here.
Okay.
But like you say, with Sam Darnold being out, I can't get to the Jets either.
All right, before I let you go, Mark, what could you tell us about your relationship with Covers.com?
Well, it's a good relationship. I've been with Covers for a long, long time, since their inception. We've been partnered together here. We do a lot of good things. I post a lot of great articles and insight onto the site. You can check those out. I've got, throughout the NFL football season, lots of good reads. You can find that out at Covers.com. Also, my best selections are available each and every day at Covers.com.
And wall-to-wall college football as well, correct?
Wall-to-wall college football. Football is what it's all about, baby.
I appreciate it as always, Mark. We'll see you next time.
Hey, my pleasure, Greg. Be good. Enjoy the games and be well.